canceled sessions with you change as her relationship with Mr. Depp went on in time?
Yeah, and as I said earlier, Amber was never late when we worked at the studio. And then as it went on, I began having to actually build in a cushion of an hour around her appointment. It started out just an extra 15 minutes here and there because she'd be late coming downstairs, or they'd be discussing.
Is it possible that she was late because she became an addict
at that moment in time? And eventually, as the relationship progressed and the fighting got heavier, I would have to build in time because she'd be sobbing at the beginning of sessions, and we couldn't work until we got her together.
Act like you're not sobbing.
Yeah, I ended up having to do a lot of cushion time around her just so that we could actually get something accomplished, because she was often very upset.
Did you have occasion to observe Ms. Heard crying naturally, not acting, when you had coaching sessions with her during the time that you were together romantically with Mr. Depp?
I would say the last year they were together, probably 80-90% of our sessions began with her crying. That would be increasing as it went on. Ironically, she has a little difficulty crying, acting-wise.
No kidding.
Which a lot of us do. And so, yeah, we would have to work when we were doing it acting-wise. But it was.
I hope they just ask her a bunch of questions about her struggles with crying while
Based on
acting.
your testimony here,
Do you know how bad I wish I saw the jury right there?
acting is the crying that she did in a role different than the crying you observed so often in the last year of her relationship with Mr. Depp?
Oh, it was great.
Yes, inherently acting. Crying
Describe
is
the
different.
differences.
Unless
Describe
somebody
the
is
crying
really
she would do.
Well,
in
her
a role.
crying in a role involved tears, actually. So
entirely different thing than they focus on their own
Just
stuff.
paint it out for the jury. That'd be great.
So she's not a method actor, so it would be completely.
Did you teach her how to use a napkin for tricks to try to
For
get
your
herself to
own
cry?
self, Ms. Sexton, how did you react
Too bad this
when
is
you
back in
saw
2019.
Amber at these sessions times the way you described?
I have a caretaker personality, so
Remember, we're the
I
ones who
would
make progress
prioritize taking
happen.
care of the person in front of me over
Hey, don't worry.
doing
We'll fix
work,
you right up.
which is why I ended up building in all that extra time, because I cared about her as a human and I wanted to be there for her in as much as I could as a friend. So there's no point on working on something if someone isn't fully there or they're
If it's
upset.
a people problem, I'm your man.
It's more important to deal with the person and take care of them than
It's
work.
absolutely untrue on acting classes.
And
You
during
often
those
want to
sessions,
be in a
particularly
state
the
of
last
distress
year
to
when you
work on
Ms. Heard
how you
eyes
act when you're in
open, what was your
distress.
understanding of the reason for her tears?
I would hear them fighting and then hear her come in, and she would be a wreck after she came in. I couldn't make out what they were saying. And
I help when I can. Shut
personally
up when I
wasn't
can.
trying to listen to their fights, so I would just hear the sounds of the screaming. And her usually, you could tell she would open the door and try to get him to be quiet, and then it'd go back to him yelling. And so that would directly
clearance,
occur
pal.
before she would come down and be upset and trying to pull herself together.
What do you recall seeing her say she told you that they were fighting about?
I was witness to some of those. He didn't want her going out without any sort of security or any team. He didn't want her going
Let's
and
go,
doing
people!
things just on her own.
You
If it's a people
described
problem,
earlier
I'm
in
your
your
man.
testimony, Ms. Sexton, what Amber Heard was like when you first met her.
Never had luck.
During this
Never
period
needed.
when she
Easy to
was
say with that
involved
Z
with Mr.
drive
Depp,
of yours.
particularly toward the end of their relationship, did her behavior change?
Over the course of time, she became more and more of a hermit, only leaving the house when she had to. Again, as I said earlier, literally the houses became darker with the curtains drawn all the time. I
And
remember
scene.
one time in particular when she was living at the Eastern Columbia that we went downstairs to get a slice of pizza. I think there were
A
four of
slice
us,
of
the
pizza.
whole pizza.
and Amber gave a homeless kid down there some money, and we helped him get to the bus stop. And we came back up, and Johnny yelled at her about going out, and that she knew better than to be going out at night and that kind of thing. And when we tried to kind of be like, it's fine, we got pizza downstairs at the building across the street, then he just started screaming and getting really angry. So we kind of our way out.
What about her weight? Notice any changes during that period in her weight?
Uh-oh,
To be
tread
clear,
carefully, lady.
I'm asking about the time that she was involved with Mr. Depp.
So Amber is one of those people that loses weight when she's stressed out. So she would drop weight and look skeletal at certain points in time.
Skeletal what?
I remember
An acting
at
coach.
the wedding, she had lost a significant amount of weight to the point that I was asking her if she was eating regularly. So she's always
Amber's the kind of person who loses weight when she's on
drop
coke.
down and get a little gaunt if she was super stressed out.
The chat's attempts to spell skeletal is
And in
hilarious.
that last year that she was
She takes
involved,
Adderall and
Mr.
Provigil. I mean, that's a weight shedding
Yeah,
combination
she
from
lost
hell.
a significant amount of weight, and I noticed it specifically because I had been in Australia doing a film, and then when I came back, so I'd been in Australia since December. I came back in February, and she looked, she was skin and bones.
And
Like she was
bones?
much thinner than she normally was at that point. So I know during that time period that she had lost a lot of weight. She was very gaunt.
Now, I'm going to shortly move on to specific incidents. But for now, Ms. Sexton, I want to speak generally about
All right. Where's the after party?
And the first question I have in that regard is, during the time that you were Amber Heard's acting coach and she was involved with Mr. Depp, did you observe injuries on Ms. Heard?
When she came back from Australia, there were a lot of like little red marks on her arms that looked like freshly healing things. Skin, like red marks on her skin, on her arms that I saw. And then subsequently I would see like bruises that looked like arms being grabbed or wrists. Then I saw that all towards the end.
Did there come a time when you accompanied Amber Heard and Johnny Depp to Hicksville, California?
Yes, I went to Hicksville for Johnny's birthday celebration with them.
And in your own words, can you tell me about that trip and what happened chronologically?
We arrived at Hicksville and we had made kind of like a barbecue and drinks. As we were having a lovely time, Johnny was playing guitar and singing. And then as the night went on, like around sundown, they started passing around a bag of mushrooms and a bag of white powder. I didn't even partake in the alcohol because I had had surgery a few months before, so I was the only one stone cold sober.
Nice day.
Very convenient.
If you're into coffee.
Then I went to bed early, and while my friend and I were in our trailer and we heard the fighting happening, Johnny screaming and a commotion. We didn't come out of our trailer, and then the quieting down and everyone being like, oh, it's okay. The bodyguards, I heard them running over there. And then the next morning when we got up, the group was talking about what had happened that night. And then I kind of left that conversation and went to the trailer to check on
Got a
Amber.
hearsay objection in there.
And
That's that edit.
I saw the completely torn apart trailer. Johnny was apologizing for what he had done, and he was instructing his bodyguards to just pay it off. Let's just take care of it. And
This is my time.
I stayed with Amber. She was really shaken up.
the next
I
day,
fight with my spirit, not my fists.
can you describe for me what the trailer where Amber and Johnny were staying looked like?
The inside
Okay.
was in
Wanna make me a few
shambles. I
extra
remember
boards?
seeing a light hanging off the wall. There were broken stuff everywhere. Dishes, it looked like, or
Clear your head.
Not
Let your
dishes, like-
instincts speak.
the wood was broken. Things were hanging off the wall. It was.
If it ain't
in
my favorite
shambles on the
time-traveling
inside.
genius, punk buddy.
Well, I'd be weirded out if I wasn't.
And that next day, I think you said that you had a case to see Mr. Depp. Is that correct?
Quiet
Yeah.
steps. The
How
dragon
did he look
approaches.
that next day when you saw the trailer?
He looked very worried. He was apologizing. He was saying he would take
Nuh-uh.
care of it. He was trying. He was like, "Don't worry about it, babe. We're
Well,
gonna get
you
this
had
taken
a
care of."
future.
And Amber was really like closed off and quiet, and just kept kind of apologizing to her over and over again, and then telling his bodyguards to just take care of it, just get it done, whatever it is, just pay for it. And then he went off to go have that conversation with them.
What was Mr. Depp saying that next day when he was apologizing?
I just remember him saying, "I'm so sorry, babe. I'll take care of it. I know
Spring
this
does
is
not
bad,
pity
but I can
winter."
take care of it. I'm sorry I did this," that kind of thing.
Sorry I broke your stupid little trailer.
I want to make sure the record is clear. Did you
My
recall
family
Mr.
was
Depp
raised on
using
this
the word
show.
monster that day?
I heard him on different times making apologies that he said, "I'm sorry I turned into a monster." I just remember a profuse amount of apologies. I don't know if that time in particular had that verbiage.
Anything else about Hicksville that you remember that you haven't told me about?
I mean,
All coming
the
back.
only thing that I stated that I did see him eat the mushrooms. I saw him holding the white bag. I don't know what he did with that, the bag of white powder. Everyone except for me was drinking, and different people were partaking in different drugs at that time. So I didn't keep track of that. Yeah, I don't know anything else that I can recall.
Okay. I want
What's
to go
today's
forward to another incident,
of the summer fields?
and that is the day of April 21, 2016,
I want to go backwards in time and decide not to stream this part of the testimony.
which represents you, was Amber Heard's 70th birthday. Did you have occasion to see Amber Heard that day?
Yes, I attended the party.
And again, you say you attended the party. Can you describe the party you attended? Who was
Cut
there?
the chat.
The party was happening in one of the penthouses, the one that they didn't live in, it's where they did most
I
of their
won't stand
art
by.
and we did most of our coaching. And
From
I
shores
don't
to
remember the
hills,
number
we know
of that
every
one.
acre.
And there were several friends of Amber's there,
I can do
and
this.
we spent the first couple hours waiting for Johnny. And then eventually Amber said, "Just let's not stop waiting for him. Let's just start." So we went out to the balcony to start dinner, and that's when Johnny finally came down.
Snap
and
out of it, sister.
he was
There's fighting to
severely
be done.
inebriated
This
when he came
is
down.
how I fight.
And they
Hardened scales.
I hate
Right.
adverbs and descriptions
I
on
don't remember his last
testimony.
name. It starts with an M. Escorted him, kind of helped him stay
Invaders.
stable. And we went to the table and we started dinner. And Johnny and I was sitting 2 seats away from Johnny. Johnny and Amber clearly were very tense and had been, I don't know what they were doing. They were very tense. And he would try to kind of touch her and she would shy away. And then Rocky was trying to change the tone of the party because it had really gotten very somber at that point. And she asked everyone to kind of say their favorite story about Amber. And as we went around the table, everyone shared their stories. And when we got to Johnny, he started talking about that he remembered when he first met her, the imprint of Amber's ass on his couch.
Yeah.
Words. And
I hope this works.
it just all kind of took a turn from there. She was clearly embarrassed. She asked him to stop, and he kept telling the story, and it got really awkward and uncomfortable at that point, and never really recovered any sort of jovial energy. We ate, and then I left shortly thereafter.
I forgot to ask you this question about Hicksville. The day after, when you saw Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard in the wrecked trailer, did Ms. Heard seem embarrassed?
Yeah, as I said, Amber was very closed off. She was very quiet. She had said, "Don't come in. I don't want you to see this." So, yeah, she seemed very embarrassed.
Now, switching forward to Amber's 30th birthday party, I think you testified that Mr. Depp seemed inebriated when he arrived. What's your basis for saying that?
He was slurring his words and wobbly on his feet. He ran into a couple things, which is when Brandon came over and kind of locked arms with him to kind of help him stand up.
You said you saw her later with a healing bruise. Where do you recall seeing that healing bruise?
On her cheek. It was on her right cheek.
Man, I'm good.
It was right.
Do you know how long after the incident that you just discussed with the cell phone you saw Ms. Heard and her face?
It was a few days later, but I couldn't tell you exactly when. I mean, everyone heals a different way, right? I could still see kind of the yellow and stuff in there. So.
When was the last time you spoke to Amber? Was it August of this year?
Mm-hmm.
What'd you say to her?
When was the last time you spoke to her specifically?
Excuse
Do you remember?
We went over to have, it was sometime in August. I can narrow it down to August, to have wine, have a glass of wine and catch up. Because, like I said, I think it had been 2 years since we'd physically seen each other.
I'm so hungry.
Both times when
And
you
I
met
hate
with Ms.
every
Heard
second
in
of
August
this.
this year, did you meet with her at her house?
Backup.
I'm your backup.
Yes.
Did Ms. Heard mention any of the allegations that Mr. Depp is making against her in relation to this case when you met with her?
Only to talk to the attorneys about it.
Just a recap on this stuff, because I
When you
know
say only to talk to the attorneys about it.
this gets so
Specifically,
mind-numbing.
did Ms. Heard tell you?
Like
What have
she said,
any
would
of
you
these
be willing to
witnesses
sit down and
testified
talk
to
my
seeing
attorneys
in
about
regards to
everything that
violence?
you witnessed.
They've seen bruises, scratches,
and then
scrapes,
afterwards,
maybe.
I
Zero violence.
after I kind of talked about it all, it felt really intense to me, and I felt incredibly guilty.
They can't even
Was it
say
during one of
that
these
they
two
saw
times
violence
that you met
after Amber
Heard
Heard was
in August
only
of
alone
this
with
year
Johnny
that
Depp.
Ms.
And
Heard
so it
told
only
you
could have
for
been
the
him.
first
None of
time
that
Mr.
testimony's
Depp
existed.
had- Was it he raped her with a bottle in Australia?
Is it the moose?
Yeah, she did talk about the bottle. And yes.
Was it the first meeting that you had with Ms. Heard in August this year that she mentioned that?
No, it was after, like, I had come to see her and had a wine night and catch up, and then after I had talked to the attorneys, after we had a good cry, we were talking more about what had happened. She was saying how she didn't even tell me everything. Yeah, that's when it
My
came out.
shield is my sword. Good
There's
luck.
a new part of my story that I didn't tell you while confiding all the rest of it.
Ms. Heard told you about the bottle incident in Australia where she claims Mr. Depp penetrated her with it. Before your deposition, your first deposition date in August of 2019?
Yes, it was after I had talked to the attorneys.
Yep, I'm flying.
After you had spoken to the attorneys informally, correct, at her house?
Yeah.
So you informally spoke to the attorneys,
You were
spoke to Amber Heard,
deposed in this
then you
case,
did your deposition.
on, I believe it was August 30th, 2019.
Yes.
You spoke to her the same month that you did your deposition, because it was in August when you spoke to her.
And make the record really clear. This was the first time Ms. Heard had told you that Mr. Depp had allegedly penetrated her with a bottle
Real
in
good to
Australia,
see you.
correct?
Yeah, she had told me about the assault with the bottle, being hit with the bottle and the broken glass and everything. And then she had told me about all that many times before. And then this time she started crying and sobbing and started telling me about the assault. The frustrated assault.
And when Ms. Hurd told you about this alleged rape that occurred, did she know that you were going to be deposed by her attorney?
No, because they were all in the other room. They didn't even tell me that they were like, we may have you for a deposition. And that's when I had said to them, if you're going to do that, I would appreciate it if you did it before I left the States. And they said, we may or may not need you. And it was a couple days later that they then sent me the contact and said, we are going to need you.
Since you've known Ms. Hurd, can you tell me how many times you've spent maybe a significant amount of time with Mr. Depp?
I would say probably around like 10 or 20 times.
And of those 10 or 20 times that you saw Mr. Depp and spent maybe more significant time than him just passing through a room, how many times would you say he was or appeared to be sober?
Not many. If he was coming down to have a conversation, he was pouring a glass of whiskey or rolling a joint or having wine. It always seemed to me that he's not a social animal, if you will, and he would have a drink or a smoke in order to go talk to people, is what it felt like. But, so most of the time I saw him, it was that.
You would agree with me, though, Ms. Sexton, that someone getting a drink is different than someone appearing drunk, correct? For example, if it was his first drink of the day. So my question is a little bit more specific. Of the 10 or 20 times that you saw Mr. Depp, how many times did
This sounds like Camille.
inebriated?
They must have switched.
Not, holding a glass of whiskey or smoking a joint, but how many times did he appear inebriated to you?
I would say at least half, if not more.
How would you describe Mr. Depp's personality when he was or appeared sober versus when he appeared inebriated?
He was very quiet when he was sober, and before he would start drinking, he was very quiet. Almost a whisper mumble most of the time, and then he would get very loud when he was inebriated, and he would go to like boisterous first and telling like cool stories and stuff, that kind of happy drunk, and then it would move into the loud, angry
Look
drunk.
how we have grown!
When you say loud and angry drunk, did you witness Mr. Depp be angry when he was drunk?
A couple of times, yeah.
Describe
When was
his
the first
anger.
time you witnessed Mr. Depp appear?
Okay. Want to make me a
angry
few
and
extra boards?
angry?
Yes! I mean, sure, whatever.
I couldn't tell you the first time per se. I have images in my head. I remember him like yelling and screaming, and the bodyguard coming over and being like, "Hey, boss, let's take this
All
to
coming
another
back to
room."
me now.
Can you tell me as much as you can remember of that incident?
I remember being in the kitchen of that house.
A lot of time in kitchens.
He came down and he was yelling about something. Amber and I were having a conversation, and we were going to, I think we were going to work on something that day. It was later in the evening where it was really dark in there. Like I said, sometimes they drew all the curtains. In my memory, it's very dark. And he was yelling, and that older guy came and like scooped his arm around him, and it's like, "All right, boss, let's take this to another place," because he was inebriated. I could tell from the way he was talking, and he was just kind of yelling.
See you a few
I
minutes ago.
don't recall what was happening. It all kind of happened very quickly. I don't recall what he was yelling about, or if it was even at anybody. He was just kind of down there and drunk, and we scooped him up.
You anticipated my next questions, which were who was he yelling at and what was he yelling about. So you don't recall, is that correct?
No, I don't.
And you said the other instance that you remember of Mr. Depp appearing inebriated and being angry was at one of his penthouses in downtown LA, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
What were the circumstances that you remember about that incident?
I remember one time he was mad that people were in the house because I had just gotten there.
All
I don't
coming
even
back to me now.
remember. There might have been like 2 people there or something. I don't remember. But yeah, he was storming up those stairs to his office bedroom area. And then Amber and I went to the other penthouse to work.
And in either incident, both at Sweetser and at the penthouse, when you saw Mr. Depp and he appeared to be breathing painfully and yelling, did you see him hit his hurt at any point?
No, I did not see him.
Did you see him
Can't
hit
fly if you
his
don't
hurt?
try.
I did not see him kick her.
Did you see him throw
One more
something at
time.
her?
I saw him coming at her, and that's when the bodyguard stepped in, like
do
coming
my own
towards
stunts.
her. But I did not
This is a
like
no-fly
it was so
zone.
throwing himself at, like, but I was not witness to him throwing objects at her.
Throwing himself at her.
He was coming at her. Are you describing the incident at Sweetser or at the penthouse?
Sweetser, he came in through that hallway, and we were sitting at, it was kind of like an island there, like right in front of the fridge, and I was in front of the fridge, and he came in from there, was like coming at her, and then the bodyguard, like came in and scooped him up.
Just the incident, you don't remember what Mr. Depp was yelling about or
Yeah.
why?
Yes.
But it appeared to you that Mr. Depp was coming at Miss Heard.
Yeah.
What?
She was shaking and upset. It felt like something that had been going on for a while.
And all the time that you've known Miss Heard and Mr. Depp, did you ever see Mr. Depp be violent towards Miss Heard?
I never saw him hit her. I
That's-
heard him use terminology, as I said before.
Words are violence. We're back.
As I said, come at her, but I never saw him hit her.
Use terminology is words
I
like
would've
cunt and
called the
bitch.
cops, to be
That's
honest.
You
words
never
can
saw
be
Mr. Depp
violent, threats, genuine
throwing
bona fide
at her,
threats.
objects at her, correct?
No, the only thing I saw was the aftermath. Like, I would see things broken afterwards. And like I said, in Hicksville, I heard the yelling and then saw the breaking and saw him apologizing for it. But I, with my own 2 eyes, did not see him physically break the stuff or throw the stuff.
When Mr. Depp and Miss Heard went to Australia, did she tell you that she threw a bottle of vodka at him and that's what severed his finger?
No, she had told me that he had broken the bottle and cut himself with the bottle that he had broken.
When she told you that he had cut himself with the bottle he had broken, did she say that he had
Always trust your spirit.
taken the bottle and cut off his finger? Or that it was an accident and that his finger was severed from the broken bottle?
Which is
Do
great
you
because
understand the
neither of those
Yeah,
make any sense.
She didn't say that he.
Is everything spoiled?
She didn't indicate that he cut off, like went purposely to cut it. What it seemed to me is that he had broken the bottle against something, and then he was doing things with the bottle, like shaking it around, and that he had cut himself from that. It didn't indicate that he had in any way purposely cut himself.
Do you recall Johnny ever saying something to you in a conversation with him later?
Completely different from her story, by the way.
Insurance stuff?
From Amber Heard's
I
story.
remember a specific time when Amber still lived at Orange, and Amber was out with her girlfriends, and I had come over too early for the party, so it was just Johnny and I sitting there having some whiskey, and he was smoking cigars, and he was talking about that it was, I said something about, he said he had to get up early to do a test, and I was like, oh, don't you have any sort of, like, concern about that? And he's like, it's easy to fake endurance tests. That's why we do what we do. I was talking to him because another client of mine had to do an insurance test, and he was like, oh, you can fake a piss test, you can do this. And he just kind of went over a few different ways that it's easy to fake insurance tests and made a joke of it.
A clear
Oh, thank God.
mind knows true strength.
Surprised the gallery didn't
All right,
erupt.
ladies and gentlemen, we've
into
come to the end
applause.
of the day today, so have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Again, do not discuss the case with anybody and don't do any outside research, okay? Have a good evening.
The jurors are there covered in cobwebs. Just skeletons wearing clothes.
It's like the waiting room in Beetlejuice.
Yeah, right.
Oh, really just... Wow. These days of video testimony are the worst.
How many more witnesses do they have?
Don't know.
Do you need a WebEx? You don't need a WebEx link? Depositions and live witnesses. Okay. All right. That sounds good. All right.
How
Everybody
many
knows
of
their
each?
homework, right? Okay. Thank you. All right. We'll see you in the morning.
I see every move.
How many of each? Please, Elaine. Just put a bullet between my eyes if you're going to play more of those. These useless depot witnesses. But yet again, though, we get to one of the major incidents of violence, this Australia incident, and Amber Heard telling her person about how Johnny cut his finger off the bottle. And when Amber Heard testifies about it, she can't testify how his finger got chopped off because she never saw it, didn't remember it, doesn't know. He might have cut it off later. Well, she had been bottle raped and beaten so savagely that she has no idea what happened there. It just happens at a different time. Her own sister can't testify consistently with what happened on the staircase. So where are these witnesses' credibility? Where's Amber's credibility? Who do you believe? I mean, the likely answer is if no one's story lines up, you don't believe anybody.
How does this play out if clearly, Johnny Depp is no saint, right?
Right. Yeah.
Neither is Amber Heard, but how does it play out if they both basically defamed each other or were crazy towards each other?
Well, if they both defamed each other, then each one could theoretically win a jury verdict, and then it would be a damages contest,
Right. That's
effectively. Right. If neither defamed each other, they would both lose, I guess.
Right.
Or you have the possibility of a hung jury. It's got to be unanimous in Virginia.
Really?
Yeah. So it's 7 jurors, and it has to be unanimous.
Their blades will dull before
So
they
Is that for
fall.
all civil trials in Virginia?
I don't know the exact rule. I just know for this one it is. There is some monetary threshold where this particular thing sets up, but I don't know if it's like a really low one or if
Do
it's
the alternate jurors know that they're the alternates?
not yet. I don't think.
My path is
No,
This
you
can be
can't
like
let them know.
Rittenhouse
It's
where they
already
did the
horrible.
bingo thing at the end.
Attack!
Yeah,
I
they.
mean, if you're a juror, wouldn't you just? I mean, there's a particular motivation here to find against both of them for the full claim, just to F them for wasting my
Yeah.
time.
If you're a member of this jury, you're probably just so pissed off that you
Yeah.
have to be there.
I would be.
Yeah.
The dragon lives.
You took me out of my life and made me sit there for what, a month listening to these millionaires yell at each other.
Your attack is
Yeah, that's a possibility. Any of the possibilities that are out there, I think the worst case scenario for Johnny would obviously be losing on his claim and then losing to Amber on her claim. I don't think that's realistic. The statements from Adam Waldman are really hard to link to damages sustained by Amber Heard. To me, that is just not jiving. Mainly because she testified that she kept all her contracts. Like, it's like, wait, how do you have damages if you're still in Aquaman and you still have your L'Oreal contract as of the time you're testifying? Those are the 2 contracts you mentioned. You have them. Well, I had to fight really hard. Well, what does that mean? Like, what?
It doesn't mean anything.
She didn't
That just
testify.
means she kept them.
Yeah, she didn't testify that, for example, Warner Brothers fired her. She hired an attorney to enforce for breach of contract. They renegotiated the contract. She received less money. She had to take a cut on residuals. She didn't testify to any of those things where she would have received damage. She just said, I had to fight really hard to keep it. But you still kept your contract.
I love it when things converge
So
like that.
I don't see how they fulfill the damages element on her counterclaim at this point. It's just that element is missing. But that being said, I think if there is a push, which I think, Rob, you've said it seems really unlikely that a jury would not be unanimous just due to the nature of preponderance of the evidence and
I mean, just the nature of juries in general. Like, it's amazing how how many times they actually find unanimity.
yeah.
I mean, you would think it would be the reverse. It's not really the case. So, I don't know. We'll see. I don't think Amber scored any points today. Not any big ones.
No, and it's like anytime they would get a good win, it was undercut by something. The best was the guy testifying. He was engaging, like you said, he seemed believable and credible, but everything else was a waste. And I thought Whitney Hurd was going to be their bombshell witness.
So interesting
go ahead.
thing about her. Remember how there was all this conversation about the deposition that she walked out on?
Yeah.
So she was feeling ill during the middle of her depo and didn't sit for the cross element of that depo. There's a motion for sanctions motion limited to try and get her precluded from giving any testimony. That was pending as of the start of trial. We never knew what the resolution was, and then all of a sudden she shows up on the witness list as possibly testifying live. I pulled up her UK witness statement, and that UK witness statement is 27 pages.
Wow.
Yep. And today, how long was she on the stand?
Like 30 minutes. I mean, so they must have severely cropped her testimony to what she. I mean, I don't even know what. It's relegated to just a staircase incident, pretty much, and a little bit of foundation. How did you know her? But they didn't get anything else in. So, I guess that was the sanction, was to limit her testimony. I don't know that was but I don't know that was a particularly beneficial win. I feel like Johnny Depp's team didn't. I feel like they could have gone into her on cross on some other stuff, and some other people seem to be indicating that there's more to Whitney Hurd that they could go into. But I'm not super familiar with it. The only thing I know about is that letter sent from her friend that impeaches her her testimony about the staircase. That's the only thing I'm particularly aware of. But they can bring that in on rebuttal. They don't need it on her. And I think it'd be better to bring it in on rebuttal because it'll be fresher towards closing arguments. And you come in and say, yeah, by the way,